Welcome to The Explainer. In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, a ceasefire can feel like a real beacon of hope. But what happens when that hope just evaporates in only 14 days? Today, we're digging into the failed US-Iran talks, a collapse that brought the world right to the edge. Let's get into what went so wrong.
So the stage was all set. Peace talks were supposed to happen in Islamabad, under this really fragile ceasefire. But just as the diplomats were getting ready to meet, then President Trump drops this bombshell. And make no mistake, this wasn't just a statement. It was a negotiation tactic. It was a crystal clear choice for Iran. Either you make a deal or you get ready for military action.
But, that hope didn't last long at all. The talks stalled almost before they even began. And this wasn't just a simple disagreement. It was a fundamental clash of worldviews. Both sides walked into that room with red lines already drawn in the sand, fueled by years and years of deep-seated mistrust. It basically made the ceasefire meaningless from the get-go.
So you gotta ask, right? Why did it all fall apart so fast? Well, according to analysts, the answer really lies in this high-stakes game of bluff. This was never a negotiation about compromise. It was a test of wills. It was a game of chicken where both sides were absolutely determined not to be the first one to blink.
Okay, so let's really look at this diplomatic game. It all kicked off with both the US and Iran tabling a list of 10 non-negotiable demands. And as you're about to see, these demands weren't just a little different. They were from entirely different planets.
Just look at the contrast here. It's night and day. The US demands were all laser-focused on dismantling Iran's military power. Keep the Strait of Hormuz open, stop enriching uranium, no more missile development. But Iran's list? That was all about economic survival and regional power. They wanted all sanctions lifted, and these are the crippling financial penalties that basically cut a country off from the rest of the world. And they had this other demand the US said was a total non-starter, that Israel had to stop attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. They weren't even speaking the same language.
Wow. This quote, reportedly from inside the White House, just perfectly captures the toxic atmosphere. It shows you the sheer contempt that was in the room. The US didn't just reject Iran's offer, they publicly mocked it. I mean, when one side is literally throwing the other's proposal in the trash, there's just no room for any real negotiation.
So, to understand why Iran felt like it could make these huge demands, we need to look at its most powerful piece of leverage. And it's not a weapon, it's a geographic choke point. It's a spot on the map that gives them incredible economic power, the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz isn't just some random body of water. You have to think of it as a critical artery for the entire global economy. This incredibly narrow channel is the choke point for a massive percentage of the world's energy supply, and Iran sits right there in a position to control it. Just let that number sink in for a second. 20%. 1/5 of all the oil the world uses every single day has to pass through this one tiny waterway. That is a massive, massive vulnerability in the global supply chain. And this is exactly how Iran decided to flex its muscle. During the standoff, they literally choked off traffic in the strait. They took the flow of ships from over 100 a day all the way down to just 10. This wasn't some empty threat. This was a real-time demonstration of their power to cause serious global economic pain.
And listen, this isn't just about the price of gas for your car. A shutdown of the strait affects everything. The natural gas that heats our homes, 40% of the global supply of fertilizer for our food, and even the plastics we use in everyday products. Iran even tried to leverage this by reportedly demanding that ships pay tolls in Chinese yuan or crypto just to get around US sanctions.
So, if the Strait of Hormuz is Iran's economic leverage, then its nuclear program, well, that's the ultimate trump card in this high-stakes game. It represents a threat so big that it shapes this entire conflict. Right now, according to US and Israeli intelligence estimates, Iran has stockpiled enough highly enriched uranium to produce somewhere between 8 and 10 nuclear weapons. Now, that doesn't mean they've built the weapons, but they have the core material to do it.
And this really brings us to the core of the mistrust between Iran and the West. Iran insists over and over that its nuclear program is for peaceful energy production. But the US, Israel, and their allies are absolutely convinced that's just a cover story for developing a weapon. So publicly, Iran claims to be following the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a global pact to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. But US intelligence points to one key piece of evidence. Iran is enriching uranium to levels near 80%.
For a power plant, you only need about 5%. The only real reason to go that high is for a bomb. And now there are reports that Russia is actually helping them get there even faster. This quote from President Trump really lays bare the core fear that's driving U.S. policy. It's this deep conviction that a nuclear-armed Iran wouldn't just be a deterrent, it would be an existential threat to Israel. And that belief is exactly why the U.S. demands nothing less than the complete and total shutdown of Iran's enrichment program.
So, with the talks completely in ruins, we're just left with this unresolved standoff. The ceasefire is meaningless, and all of the core issues are still there, creating a really dangerously unstable situation. I mean, just look at how quickly this whole thing fell apart. On day 1, you had a real glimmer of hope. By day 5, those conflicting demands made the divisions crystal clear. By day 10, Iran was squeezing the Strait of Hormuz, and by day 14, the ceasefire was officially dead. The divide was just way too big to overcome. And so we're left with these massive, unresolved issues. Every single one is a deal breaker. Lifting sanctions, stopping uranium enrichment, the future of Iran's allied militias, and this just astounding demand from Iran for $1 trillion in compensation. This is what a diplomatic dead end looks like. So what's the key takeaway here? Well, this isn't just a return to business as usual. The failure of these talks has dramatically raised the stakes, and not just for the Middle East, but for the entire global economy. And that's the question that's now hanging over Washington, Tehran, and the rest of the world. The bridge of diplomacy has completely collapsed. The options now seem to be narrowing, and they're pointing towards open conflict. Can another path actually be found before it's too late? That remains the dangerously unanswered question. Thank you for joining The Explainer.